We are going to take our finals next week. What are some tools that you would recommend that we do to build resilience as we prepare for those finals?
Finals are a hard time. It's not something that's easy. It's very stressful. I think leaning on your support system is important during those times, and resilient does not mean, doing it alone.
Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Make Today Well Live, the podcast. I'm Allie Norman Franks, Beverly Hills High School wellness counselor. Peer counselor Simone Medizadeh will be interviewing Samira Sorori, who is a former Maple Center counselor, and she will discuss the steps to cultivate resilience.
Hi, my name is Simone Medizadeh. I'm a senior and also a peer counselor at Beverly. Just to start off, can you tell us about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Samira Sorori, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I got my BA in sociology from UCLA. I got my master's in clinical psych at Antioch University, and I actually worked at the NormanAid Center when I was doing my first traineeship. And it was such an awesome experience, and it really made me want to continue to work in schools. So I eventually went on to specialize in anxiety and OCD. I opened my own practice, and then I'm also a school counselor for K through 8 right now in Irvine. Yeah, so it was a big, what is it called? Like a marker for me. Like it was a very big moment in my life working at NormanAid. So I was so happy to do this. It feels really full circle.
Yeah, that's great. I love NormanAid. It's the best place at Beverly. To continue on, this month is NormanAid's Resilience Month. How do you define resilience?
I think resilience is having the ability to rebuild with having hope at the same time. And in my experience, reframing the negative thoughts while you're going through something traumatic or something really intense helps you build that resilience. Like you have to be able to see it from a different perspective when it's happening to you. So if you're going through something really big and you're seeing it through like a negative lens, then, it's not, you're not really building that resilience. But if you're seeing it in a more neutral way or a more positive way, then you're able to kind of instill hope in yourself and build from that traumatic moment. And that's very important. I think it's quite important to have, but it can be quite challenging to start building it. But I think everybody experiences their own events differently. But I think everybody does have the capability to switch and at least put in the effort to kind of reframe the thoughts and practice the habit of doing it differently so they start to rebuild it.
Right. I thank you for that. And many people think that resilience is about showing strength and always bouncing back. This toxic positivity can make people feel guilty and having off days. How do you
Mhm.
help someone who feels that they have to be strong and positive all the time and not wanting the help of others?
Well, I think off day is normal, right? We all have we all have our off days. I think if the person doesn't want help, it can be really hard. But I think one of the most important things is even if they, don't want to seek the help, or even if they're, if they're having a couple of off days, to really seek out a support system. And I think that really helps you get through it, because when you're leaning on other people, when you're confiding, when you're, even as having a sense of vulnerability, it does get you through those tough times. And if you don't want to lean on anybody, which sometimes it does happen, then I think one of the best things to do is at least have some healthy coping strategies in your back pocket. So what I like to usually suggest to people is if they have just like a notebook or a blank piece of paper and write down all the things that you like to do, all the healthy mechanisms like drinking a lot of water, going outside, doing some yoga, exercising, playing a sport, or something that really gets your mind off of the event that's going on, and maybe you need like a little mental break from it. That's okay. But being able to kind of, you know, for lack of a better phrase, like take care of your mind, so that you're able to have like a healthy coping strategy, when you're doing that. And also, I think talking to a counselor, talking to a neutral party is helpful. If I mean, I love the power of therapy and counseling, and I think I I wish when I was in high school I had NormanAid as a resource, honestly, or any type of mental health center. We didn't have it at all. Most of my friends never had it, and there are other schools. So I think it's wonderful that if you have that resource, to utilize it. So if you're having even like an off a few days, or if something's going on at home and you don't want to talk to your friends, you don't want, your, people to know what's going on in your life for whatever reason, at least talking to a professional that is neutral, and it's a non-judgmental space where you can get that support that you need, because everybody needs to be heard. And I think in those moments it really does help you get through it instead of getting over it. Mm-hmm.
I like what you said about that. That's really interesting. And I think a support system is like one of the most important things for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to continue on, what are the practices that you find are most important for students in high school under the pandemic times and in normal times?
Well, I mean, pandemic and normal times are so different. It's really, I think it's such an abnormal time. And I mean, and that's also what life can be. It can really throw some really crazy things at you, and pandemic being one of them. But I think the recipe for really getting through it, there's a couple of things: building emotional regulation skills, finding things that you think are meaningful to you, being able to laugh, spending time with friends and family. Practicing gratitude is another one. I like to do that. I have a little gratitude journal that I write in. At least I try to do it once a day, but as much as I can. And helping others, because I think when you help other people, you're also helping yourself, and it makes you feel good. And most importantly is, I think, reframing your negative thoughts, because we all get these thoughts that don't make us feel good, right? Like we get thoughts about, oh, I'm not good enough, or how come I'm always making a mistake, and things like that kind of just insert themselves into our minds. But I think taking the moment to pause and reframing those is very helpful when you're wanting to get through difficult times, such as a global pandemic, or even a breakup, or your parents are getting divorced, or things like that, and other events that are going on. It's I think it is quite important to be able to notice it and then be able to shift it. So I'm curious, how, now that we're talking about school pressures, how have you guys been managing the school pressures with distance learning and finals, and overcoming these new challenges and unexpected situations such as the pandemic?
Um, I can answer this one. I think it's just important to like lift your head up and like think about like the positive things going on in your life and try to just tell yourself that like things will get better. Like I know that's what I try to do, especially in times like the pandemic where you don't know if like when will it get better or when we can like start going back to normal. I think it's just really important to like try to get back to a normal routine. Like I think going back to school has really helped me because I'm trying to like get back into like the normal routine of like waking up early, being productive, going to school, walking, seeing people. So I think just trying to like get back into that normal groove has helped me. And like with taking tests or just like doing homework assignments in school, I think I just try to like take breaks every now and then and study with friends or whenever I can. So it's just like I'm trying to get back to normal with like being with people and asking teachers in school and just like getting back into that groove.
Wow. That's so helpful. I think I totally agree with you. Getting into routine is it's such so foundational, and going back to normal, whatever, whatever, however you want to define that. But yeah, wow, so true. The pandemic really does derail us, I think, and I think getting back into your routine is awesome because
Yeah.
that helps you like get what you need to do, and yeah, that's great. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So can you share a personal experience that helped you build resilience when you were in high school?
Yes, there's so many. The main one I can think about is probably the first one, which is so I'm from Florida, and I moved from Florida to LA when I was 13. So it was the summer before high school started. I did not know anybody, and I was 13 years old. It was right before my 14th birthday. I moving to a completely different, like across the country, completely different environment, completely different culture. It was a very, very different scenario I was really stepping into, and without knowing anybody. So it was really scary. Um, but I think there was one of two ways I could have seen this. I could have been really nervous and scared and really anxious and not willing to accept what was going on, or I could have been embracing it and excited to learn. So at that time, I chose to be excited. I chose to embrace this new thing. And obviously I had like my best friends there, the people I grew up with, like that I've known for so long, and I had to, figure out new ways to keep in contact with them. So for example, we didn't have texting or social media or any of that, and I literally wrote letters. So we would write letters to each other. So finding different ways to manage the issue or the experience that you go through, even if it is something so, and look, like, I'm not gonna lie, obviously I was nervous and scared and completely terrified, but I tried to actively embrace what was happening. So I think what helped me the most in that aspect to build resilience is to just really be aware of my attitude towards it and make it something that's accepting, whereas I'm not resistant. And I think that helped the most. And that moment of moving to a different state at such a young age, I think has really shaped me as a person. And I always look back at that as a marker and say, oh my gosh, like if I could do that, right? That was so long ago. But if I could do that, and if I at that young of an age can be so flexible and so accepting to what's happening to me and be accepting of change, I can really grow as a person. And, you know, so many other things happened in my life, so many like bigger things, like more intense things um, have happened. And I was really able to kind of build on the resilience that I've already done when I was 13 and probably when I was younger. And I was able to kind of get through those experiences as well. So that was something that was, quite helpful. And I know in high school you go through so much, and it's such a changing time in your life, and not just with, friends and family and people that you know, but also with yourself. You're getting to know yourself. And I think throughout life, at least I'm still trying to get to know myself. And I think most of us do. And as you go on day by day and go through different experiences in your life, you start to notice how you react to things. And I think being able to reframe that to something that is neutral and something more helpful for you, whether that is positive or not, as long as it's helpful and healthy, then I think that's like a positive way of getting through those things.
Thank you for that. You said it's important to reframe our thoughts. Can you show us how to practice? For example, I'm a junior and I'm going to fail my math final and I won't get into any college that I want. How could I reframe those negative thoughts into something positive?
This is my favorite thing to do. So, so in my private practice and also with the kids I work with, I do this all day. This is like one of my favorite things to do. So what you're describing, right? Like I'm a junior, I'm going to fail my math test, I'll never get into college. That's an example of catastrophizing, when you have a real catastrophic thought of going from A to Z to Z to Z to Z, right? So you start from one thought and all of a sudden you're not going to get into college. So I think in that moment, to reframe it, I think you can go something like, just because I fail my math test does not mean I won't get into college. So you're still using the same wording, but you're making it more neutral. So instead of saying, I'm going to fail my test, I'll, never get into college, and I'll never get a job, then I'll never da 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 da, because that goes on and on and on. You just simplify it. Just because I fail doesn't mean I won't get into college. They don't equal each other. And the other thing I'll say about thoughts, which are quite important, is when they do start to happen, when they're not helpful to you, these thoughts are not facts, right? You haven't even taken your math test yet. And you may fail, right? You might, and you might not, and you don't know. And it depends on if you study, depends on several things, right? If you sleep enough, if you study enough, all that stuff. But what's important is how you're reframing it. And I think neutralizing it is quite important. And also on that note, not only neutralizing it, but sprinkling in some self-compassion so that you're able to, continue to go about your day. Because if you're thinking about failing your math test all day, I don't know about you, but once I have that thought, I'm looping. I think about it all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna go to the fridge and eat something. Gosh, I'm gonna fail that test. So it's not fun. And it's not a fun thought to continue. But I think if you stop yourself, reframe, right? Neutralize it, like we talked about, just because I fail doesn't mean that I won't get into college. And add in some self-compassion. So I'll give you an example of that. Let's say I spill my tea or my coffee, and all of a sudden my negative thought is, gosh, Samira, you can't do anything right. Why are you always like messing up? You're not enough. And then all of a sudden it just starts spiraling. And I think in that moment, something that I can do to neutralize and add in self-compassion is say to myself, okay, well, I spilled my drink, but it's not like I spill it every day. I'll just be more careful next time. And you see the difference? I'm not beating myself up. I'm just adding in something that is quite more factual, right? I really don't spill every day. And if I do, that's okay. But I'm being kinder to myself. So I think that's something very important when you are reframing. And if it's hard to kind of do the first one, right? Because there's several ways you can do it. So it's hard to do the first one, which is just because I fail doesn't mean I won't get into college. Maybe you can do the second one. Hey, like, it's okay. Practicing kindness to yourself.
Right. Practicing kindness is the most important.
Yeah.
I agree. Speaking of like finals, we're gonna take our finals next week. What are some tools that you would recommend that we do to build resilience as we prepare for those finals?
Finals are a hard time. It's not something that's easy. It's very stressful. And I totally understand that. And I think even as you get older, and if you choose to go to college or choose to go into, continue your education, the finals will come up again. And, it really depends on how you're dealing with it, right? So yeah, I think dealing with that is quite important. But I think leaning on your support system is important during those times. And resilient does not mean, doing it alone. Practicing self-compassion like we talked about, and resilience doesn't mean that it's perfection. It doesn't have to be. And it's okay to be kind to yourself during the stressful time of going through your finals. Self-care is also important. You want to make sure that you go back to basics. Taking breaks doesn't mean that you're lazy. It just means you're taking a break. You're allowing yourself to breathe. You're taking an, you're having enough sleep. Sleep is so important when you're studying. You have to sleep. That's how your brain remembers all the material that you've learned. Obviously studying, eating healthy, eating enough, right? That's important. When you're studying, you're burning calories, so it's important to be doing that. And I think also, I think what I would do is I think about the things that I would really look forward to. So making room to be excited about other things. I think that's quite important. That doesn't mean that, you're not being serious about it. It just means that, hey, like I got something really stressful going on, but if I look forward to something else, I'll be so super excited about getting the first one over with, but at least I'll get through it. And I know I've mentioned this a few times, getting through it. And then there's a difference between getting through it and getting over it, right? Getting over it, you kind of somewhat avoid the situation, or you kind of, just sweep it under the rug or brush it off or try to get through it quickly. But when you actually get through what you're experiencing, I think you grow more as a person, you build more resilience, and it's a learning lesson. Everything really is a learning lesson. So I think that's quite important to remember too, is getting through it. My mom used to tell me the only way out is through. And that's how I remember it. So that's one way you guys can think about it. What are some ways that you guys do to build resilience as you're prepping for finals?
I honestly do the same thing as you, where I like write down my whole schedule and I like look forward to something like, oh, Thursday I have I'm going to dinner with a friend, like just something like that where I can like look forward to it and it will help like the time go by.
Mhm.
And my mind will be like thinking about that as something like fun that I have to do. So that's something that I find really helpful. I also like to just like go for walks outside because like fresh air. Um, I what else? Yeah, sleep, like you said, is so important. Eating, taking breaks. I feel like that's also something super important. Not to like gather all the information like in such like a short amount of time all in your head. Like I feel like it's important to spread out breaks. Um, I don't know, just like prepping myself like 5, 6 days in advance.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like all these things just build up together and like they help me prepare a lot.
And I think you start to learn what works for you too. Everybody's different. Hmm. That's great.
That's true. Um, so next month is our self-care month, and you mentioned that self-care is helpful for building resilience. What do you do for self-care?
Wow. I really try to do it as much as I can. Some days it's hard, right? We all have our off days. Um, I enjoy going into nature. Before the pandemic, I would love to travel. That's been quite hard now. But for traveling, I think traveling for me equaled seeing something new. So because I couldn't travel during COVID, I just tried to see something new locally, safely, of course. But I think going into nature is definitely one of them. Going to the beach, going on a hike, something that makes me feel like I'm getting fresh air. Um, what else? Yoga has been quite helpful for me. Meditating, I started getting into that more. I use a couple of different apps like Calm, Headspace, YouTube, and I have a gratitude journal and I have a regular journal. So I just have an like when I say journal, it's just like a notebook. I just literally I write my feelings and then I walk away. That it just really makes me feel like A, I'm being heard, and B, I'm letting it all out. And that's been very helpful for me. I think especially during the pandemic, because it's something that, I mean, it's obviously like a really big thing that we're all going through, and any big experience or even anything that feels big to you. And when you're able to kind of process it while you're getting through it, it really does help you come out on the other side. And I think I think one of the important things to remember is neglecting yourself or overworking is not a form of strength. And I definitely learned that the hard way when I was working at private practice. Well, currently, when I was in the beginning of working at my private practice and also working at a school, I would work 12-hour days and it would be exhausting. Um, and I remember when I would study for finals for high school and in college, I would be studying nonstop. But it doesn't but I didn't really, I was exhausted after. I could barely focus on the actual test, and it never benefited me. And I think after learning that, I realized, okay, now I need to do this proper way. I need to be a little bit more healthy about it. I need to take breaks when I can. And that's really important to be able to do that. And taking breaks is just as important as studying, I think. I've also started, I started oil painting. Super random, but I really love it. And it's been really nice to create different pieces of art, whatever it may look like. So that was really nice. And also, I think for me, learning a new language, I speak Farsi, but I never knew how to read and write my whole life. And right before the pandemic, I started going to Farsi class to learn how to read and write. Shout out to Anar Center. They're amazing. But it's so rewarding because it just really helped activate a different part of my brain and just be able to feel so accomplished to do something. And I think self-care, it's so all-encompassing for me. It's such a basic thing for me to do. And I think when we get to that level of having basic things for self-care, then we're able to kind of go through what we need to go through. And in moments where we feel exhausted, burnt out, tired, having an off day, and we go, when we go and we're able to have those things for self-care, then I think it's paramount. You got to have something that you feel good about, even if it's something like oil painting or learning a new language or even just going outside. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about how you got into a routine, right? We were talking about that earlier. And I think even that's a form of self-care. During the pandemic, we all got kind of derailed from our normal daily lives. Like, before pandemic, I would wake up, brush my teeth, get ready for the day, have my tea, have breakfast, go outside and leave. I had a place to go. During the pandemic, I did none of that. And I think many of us didn't. And it kind of messes up with your flow. But I think having a routine, any routine, really any routine, any kind of purpose for your day, then that is one form of self-care as well. And I think that's quite important, is I like to call it, me and my cousin talk about this all the time, finding a purpose for your day. Finding what's my purpose? What am I going to do? Instead of, especially during the pandemic. But yeah, there's lots of things I like to do for self-care. What do you like to do?
Kind of just what you said, like walking is like my thing. Like I love to walk outside, like in like the residential area of where I live.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like to journal a lot. Like I started to journal every day or every night before I'd go to bed. I feel like that really helps. Play with my pets. That really helps too. But other than that, like that's what I mainly like to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Feels nice, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Great.
Okay, I think we're all good for now, but thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thank you for having me. It's just so nice to be here and to talk to you, and I'm just happy to help.
Thank you, Samira, for joining us for our last episode of the year. Thank you, Michael J. LeBeau, for your ongoing monthly sponsorship. And of course, thank you, PTSA and Beverly Vista PTA for your support. And KBEV, it has been awesome working with you. Thank you, listeners. Stay safe and make today well lived.